Hey Spin Inspired people, it's Imani here. Here's my tutorial and version of the kitty tunic that I made for my daughter. The pattern is by Frocks Frolics, which I'm a big fan of their patterns, especially designed for children. The patterns are in PDF format, downloadable from their website. It does come with instructions, but what I love the most about Frocks Frolics is that Marina does easy to follow detailed tutorials on her channel that makes making these garments really easy. So this is what the pattern looks like. You'll need your front and back pieces with an option of a pocket if you're making the longer dress version. You will need your front and back yoke pieces and your pattern pieces to make the plackets that will go at the back. There are 4 different length options for this pattern which have been already marked for you, so there's no lengthening and shortening that you need to do. Just choose the length that you require. One thing to note before you cut the pattern is the extra dotted line that you'll see at the side seam. This is for you to choose your fitting options. You can either choose a regular fit or a slender fit. I chose the regular fit, but if you cut along the dotted line, you get a more slender fit. For my tunic, I wanted the mid-length version, so I'm cutting along that dotted line. The fabric I used is this lightweight cotton with a really pretty orange and white check design, and for the lining I used a lightweight white cotton. Both front and back pieces are cut on the fold, so I'm just pinning that down now. Without unpinning the pattern, I went ahead and placed that on the lining fabric, cut that out, which made it a lot easier to mark my notches, which is the pleats that you will make at the center front, which can also be gathered. And you will also need to open up the back, and there's a little notch there indicating where you need to stop cutting. Also important is to mark the notches on the yokes. You will need those. Another important step for the lining of the yokes for the front and back is to fold and press the seam, the 1 centimeter seam. This will become important when we're attaching the shoulder seam, so don't miss this step. I also applied interfacing to the main fabric of the yokes. Next, I stay stitched the underarm of the outer fabric and the lining fabric before attaching them both at the underarm seam only. Did that to both front and back, trimmed down the seam, and then understitched it to the lining. Then when that's done, just turn the fabric so it's the right side out and give it a good press. Here I'm just creating my pleat, which you can do 2 ways. You can either turn and pin the pleat towards the lining so that you form a sort of inverted pleat at the front, or you can fold the pleat towards the outer fabric, which creates just one little box pleat at the front, which I preferred for my project. Now to attaching the front yoke to the front bodice. First of all, line up your centers. And either side of the center, you should have marked your 2 notches, and you want to align them to the neck edges. It does require a little manipulation, but be patient. Pin to the best of your ability, and you want to only sew the seam from one neck corner to the other neck corner. The best thing I would suggest is to place a pin where you should start and stop sewing. And this is what it should look like after a good pressing of that seam. Attaching the yoke is where it gets a little bit fiddly, but if you just take your time, you will get there, you will get good results. So now I'm attaching the lining, finding my center, and then also aligning those notches to the neck edge. So you want to pick up that seam, but this time you're only going to be sewing from that crease that you made on the lining piece of the yoke. So don't sew over that fold. Make sure you don't sew over that fold that you've made. Place your needle on that crease and then sew right along all the way along the edge of that yoke. One thing to note as per the instructions is that you're to sew this with on the outer fabric side, so that the outer fabric is facing you on the sewing machine. So again, you need to be extra careful that you don't sew past that folded edge. Here I'm trimming down the seam, but I'm only trimming down around the neck edge area, not all the way around. So I'm just stopping about 2 inches before I get to the edge of the yoke. Now to turn the yoke the right side out is an interesting technique. Basically, you're going to roll all of the fabric apart from the yoke into a little sausage. I like to describe it as a sausage in a bun type of situation, where all of the fabric will be inside your lining piece of the yoke and your outer fabric of the yoke. So basically, you'll be able to pick up those 2 edges of the yoke and pin them together with all the fabric inside. I was dreading having to describe this, but hopefully you can see what I mean. And then you want to sew the seam very carefully, making sure you don't catch any of the fabric that you have put inside, but you're just attaching the lining and the outer lining of the yokes together. So you can see I'm at the machine, and I did this really slowly because I didn't want to do any unpicking whatsoever. I wanted to make sure that I didn't catch any of the fabric inside. And what happens is when you turn it out and you pull all of that fabric out, you should have your yoke nicely attached. And once you press it, it looks beautiful. I think it's a really quick and easy technique if you just take your time. For the placket, you need your 2 pattern pieces, and once you've cut out your fabric, you want to fold around the edges as indicated by the dotted lines on the pattern. So that's my pieces folded. This is the first placket that I've ever made, so I followed the instructions step by step. First, by taking the shorter fabric and aligning the left folded edge to the left opening of the back. Fold that over, and making sure that the right side of the fabric is out of the way, you want to sew along the left edge and along the bottom. I know my fingers are indicating that you should sew all the way around the placket, but you don't actually need to. You just need to sew along the left and along the bottom edge. And for the other placket piece, you want to align the right side of the folded edge of the placket to the right side of the opening on the back. But before you go to the sewing machine, what you want to do is place the right hand side of the placket over the left hand side so it covers. Then you want to sew on the right hand side of the placket all the way down. Sew along the bottom, sew up about 3/4 of an inch, sew across that, then pivot and sew diagonally down to the bottom left hand side. Then you're going to sew back up again 3/4 of an inch, and then sew diagonally along the other way to meet the right hand side corner. And basically all you're doing is forming that criss-cross top stitching that you see on ready-made plackets, and when done neatly it looks very nice. So just taking that to the machine, taking my time sewing all the way down, and then forming my cross at the bottom. Plackets attached. Now you just want to use the same process before to attach the back yokes to the back bodice. The main thing is to match the notches to the neck edges. You will have an extra 1/2 inch on the center seam of the yoke, but that's how it should be. Again, attach the lining, making sure that you start from the crease on the fold all the way to the edge. And then use the sausage in the bun method. I'm sure there is a more technical term, but I don't know it, to attach the lining to the outer piece of the yoke. I decided at this stage to do my buttonholes and attach my buttons. And now to attach the front and the back pieces by the shoulders. First, pin and sew the seam of the outer fabric first. And then this is where the folding of the lining seam comes in handy, because you have to tuck the outer fabric into the lining piece so that it covers that seam completely. It's a bit fiddly, so once you've got one side tucked in, pin that down securely, and then tuck in the other side of the seam and pin that down. And what I didn't show you is that you'll just do a little bit of hand stitching here. You'll do a slip stitch that will attach the shoulders of both of those lining pieces. And this really does create a nice and clean seam on the shoulders. Okay, we're nearly done. We're going to sew the side seams now. Open up the lining piece and the outer fabric so that it's away from each other. making sure that you're aligning the side seams so that the hem of the tunic is also aligned, and then just sew all the way along the side seam from the outer fabric down to the lining fabric. And finally I got this pretty lace trim for the hem. Got it from eBay. It was really affordable, and I thought it'd be a lovely touch to finish off this tunic, make it more girly, something I knew my youngest daughter would really like. And all I did was pin and sewed it to the outer fabric hem. And here's the final result, a lovely girl's tunic, fit for that little princess during summer. Fabric, the colours, the style, the fit looked really good on her, and she absolutely loved wearing it. So I hope this tutorial is useful for you. If you want to try the pattern out for yourself, then please do use the link in the description box. Thank you for watching to the end of this video. Like it if you found it useful. Subscribe if you haven't already. See you at the next video. In the meantime, have a great week. Take spirit-inspired actions and do it in style.